Welcome back to another episode of Believe in Broncos on the Believe Network, sponsored by FanDuel Sportsbook, your home for everything sports betting. The NBA playoffs are fully in swing. My Portland Trailblazers are about to be eliminated from the NBA playoffs. The Denver Nuggets fighting off elimination. That's a great series to be watching. Make sure that you head over to FanDuel Sportsbook and place your bets on who will be advancing to the next round. You can find all of your prop bets over there as well. Put some money on the games. Test your luck. Test your knowledge. Maybe the Nuggets come back. Who knows? The NFL draft is complete. Another one in the books. Patrick Coyote joining you as always with my wonderful co-host Bri Maestas. Bri, the Denver Broncos no day one pick as they traded that pick to Miami for Jalen Waddle. What a great pick by the Denver Broncos there. Had to wait until day two to see some action, and the Broncos traded down yet again. But we love to see it. We're going to break down the entire draft class. We're going to break down our favorite picks. Maybe there's someone they should have got instead. Maybe there's someone that they probably should have traded up for or been aggressive for, or maybe they did the right thing. We're going to break it all down here. Bri, it is lovely to see you. It's so great to be back. This is just the most hectic season of the year. We got football starting. We got moves happening. We've got kids growing. This is a fantastic time, but I'm happy to see you. How are you doing?
Great to see you too. Yeah, you're mentioning all the things on my list of the ruminating thoughts of everything that has to get done. Ultimately, also bringing up the Denver Nuggets, who are shaving days, if not months, off of my life every single time they play. Still in it though. Can't wait to chide you later, dependent on the results of this first series here. But the Broncos made us certainly kind of wait on the edge of our seats as well. You already brought it up. The Jalen Waddle first round pick really hammers home the point that they nailed it. And I know we'll get into the details as to why, but you're not finding a Waddle in the first round in this draft. And I think that just allowed them to make a couple of moves, whether it was trading back and then trading up some to get the guy that they wanted. I like what the Broncos did here, and it made me feel really almost as if I was wearing those orange tinted glasses again. I had to do some double checking
Yeah.
with some of my camaraderie and my prospects to be like, are we feeling as good as we think we're feeling? Is this feeling going to change? We'll see what happens during mini camp and then ultimately training camp. But there are a lot of bodies coming into the building, and the Broncos did a great job of really bolstering the foundation. They already
Mm-hmm.
liked their
Mm-hmm.
roster. We talked about it pre-draft. They weren't going to have to reach for these positions of needs necessarily. And I think that they did a good job managing that. This draft was touted as very middle heavy, and I think that was represented well. It allowed George Payton and Sean Payton to move about the board as it fell. I'm sure they missed out on some guys that were topping their board, but ultimately there's some fun names on this list I know we're going to talk about. And then we get to break down all the undrafted free agents that are going to be available for the picking and filling out those camp bodies. And I'm very excited about that. So happy to be on with you, Pat. I think we're in good swords. I can't wait to see how that gets dashed later on.
Yeah. Yeah. This was a really interesting draft, just top down. It wasn't one of those classes where it's like, oh yeah, this is going to be, blue chip central. This is kind of like one of those drafts where outside of, top 20-ish picks, it's going to be a lot of like role guys, developmental guys, maybe some guys that can blossom, but like, you're not really sure. It just wasn't really touted as this amazing class. So, the Broncos going into this, I liked their strategy of like, hey, well, I think we can get a better player on the trade market than with that, that first round pick. They spent it well. They were able to pick up another sixth round pick in that trade with Buffalo to trade down. Eventually, that one got moved as well. So, I think they did a good job of kind of just waiting and seeing how the board was falling, there were a couple players, Bree, that were falling in this draft that I was like, maybe you go and get him. CJ Allen at 53 was a guy that a lot of people had him mocked to the Broncos at 62. So that was an area where, we had some guys in this class that were falling. Maybe they just didn't feel like the price was good enough to move up. Maybe they just weren't even looking to move up at all. That's okay too, because I feel like they still came away with a very, very strong class. With that being said, there were some of those guys that fell to him that they were surprised. George and Sean Payton were talking, when they were picking at 108, they had two guys on their list, both at the same position. I think we figured out who the other guy was. But they were kind of surprised. Like, they didn't think both of them were going to be sitting there. And there they were. They felt like a lot of these guys weren't going to be sitting in those spots where they picked. And that's kind of surprising to hear that. It just kind of shows, though, that I think there was a lot of up and down in the analysis and the scouting this season where, maybe the Broncos saw things that other teams didn't saw, and vice versa. Bri, this class for the Broncos was never going to be one that was, we're going to find our starting linebacker in this class. We're going to find our, we're going to find a Jalen Waddle in this class. We're going to find a replacement for, for Garrett Bowles or Mike McGlinchey in the first two rounds. This wasn't going to be that. This was going to be, hey, we're gonna pick some guys that maybe they can help support us, be good depth pieces, and then develop into a starting role in the next 2 to 3 years. And I feel like it was a meatball sitting over the plate for them. Okay, and George and Sean swung that stick and they hit it out of the park. So let's go through these picks together, Bri. At 66, the Broncos took Tyler Onyedim, the defensive tackle from Texas A&M. He was, I believe he was Dane Brugler's 7th ranked defensive tackle, and he went above guys, a couple guys that were supposed to be picked ahead of him. Chris McClellan from Missouri, that was a guy that I saw the Broncos also potentially having interest in, and Dominique Orange, somebody that a lot of people mocked the Broncos over and over. Then the Broncos took at 108 Jonah Coleman, the running back out of Washington. At 111, Cage Casey, the offensive lineman out of Boise State, a Bronco going back to a Bronco. 152, Justin Joly, the tight end from NC State. And then in the 7th round, those 3 picks, Miles Scott, the safety from Illinois, Dallin Bentley, the tight end from Utah, and Mr. Irrelevant, Red Murdoch, the amazing linebacker out of the University of Buffalo. Bri, how did you feel about the team's draft strategy when it was all said and done? Do you feel like they did a good job of kind of mitigating everything? Do you feel like there was somebody that you felt that they should have gone after or missed? Because I know there's Oscar Delp was still on the board after that first pick. Sam Roche was still on the board after that first pick. Was there anybody that you felt they missed before we get into the meat of these picks?
Yeah, exactly. The meat is exactly where the Broncos were moving with all of this. I would be remiss not to mention a couple of guys that we kind of had floating as the idea. And I think Washington falling the way that he did and ultimately getting overlooked tells me exactly that they did not miss out on him. I would be hard pressed to believe that he was higher than Coleman on their board and what have you. But I don't think there was necessarily a miss. They would have had to move up too aggressively for what was in anticipation. And I think looking at guys like Rodriguez, and then you're ultimately hoping that they would have picked a tight end sooner, meant that there was not one on the board that was as elusive as waiting until day 3. So I don't want to say they missed out. I
Hmm.
probably assume there was one or two individuals that went a little bit higher, like a la the 49ers jumping the gun to get their guy, where the Broncos probably were hoping that the individual would have fallen. But I don't think there's anyone that hits my brain where I wish that they would have moved. Roush was one that I thought would have gone a little bit later. And so
Hmm.
that wasn't one that I necessarily thought they were going to move for. That was just the way the board falls move. What about you, Pat? I'm interested to see who you would have thought they would have moved for or wish they would have, because I'm not feeling that from this
Yeah.
general vibe.
Yeah, I think they had their eyes set on addressing the offensive line in the middle rounds, which they did. Um, I was so sure that the first pick was going to be Oscar Delp. I was so sure because he checked all the boxes for us, right? He's a guy that can play the Y position, still has room to grow. Yeah, he was dealing with that foot injury, but he looked fine. Explosive after the catch, can do all the dirty work. Like that was I was so positive that it was going to be him. When they announced it was Tyler Onyedim, I was like, okay, I get it. I understand what you're doing here. You traded down, you got an extra pick. That's fantastic. Um, and he's going to fill that need. Like, is Savion Jones? This to me is a pick that says Savion Jones is not ready to take over the JFM spot. It says to me, Uwazurike is probably going to be the guy that they put in that slot, and then they're going to make Jones and Onyedem battle it out.
Mhm.
Onyedem still, from all the notes and everything that I've read about him, very explosive. Run defense is the key. Doesn't have the biggest pass rush bag, but that's something that can be taught. And if there's anyone I trust in this world, with developing really good interior defensive linemen, it is this Broncos staff. Look at the work that they've done with guys like Zach Allen and JFM and Malcolm Roach and DJ Jones and Uwazurike. This could be an opportunity where they're saying, yeah, Jones probably isn't ready, but we're still going to bolster it anyways because we need. Jones has the pass rush back. He needs to get better at
Mhm.
run defense. Onyedem has the run defense back. He's got to get better with the pass rush. So it's kind of like, we're killing two birds with one stone here. We're beefing up the loss of JFM, while getting a guy that's going to be really good against the run out of the gate. One of Brugler's big notes about him is that he struggles with double teams and down blocks. That's fine. He's not going to be getting double teamed a whole lot here in Denver. It's going to be a lot of one-on-ones, and that's where he's going to exceed. So I liked their draft strategy. I felt really, really confident that they were making the right decision. And if you passed on Delp and you passed on Roush, like it's gonna happen. You can't have every single prospect. There were other guys. And they still ended up getting two pretty good tight ends out of this class. So I'm fine with it. Um
I'm surprised that they went with two, though. That was, I
I'm
think,
not.
maybe what caught me off guard, specifically what they did in the offseason to retain some of their guys. But
Yeah.
you're right. It wasn't supposed to be a flashy rebuild draft. I think this was really about maintenance. And this was a
Yeah.
um, make a swing for the impact move, but they didn't have to go out of their way to do so, because you already talked about how they were having to replace depth here. They have to add more protection for Bo Nix and then just make the offense a little bit more physical. And I
Yeah.
think adding developmental players allows them to not have this pressure. They didn't have to reach under pressure, and they don't have to start these individuals immediately.
Yeah.
And they got younger
Yeah.
on both lines. And I think that's really important, because as you see aging out in the tackle area, and then you're losing some guys in free agency that you just couldn't afford to keep, you're really helping these positions. And rounding out the running back and tight end rooms really just allows for improved depth across the board. You're not going to be looking for who's on the practice squad ready to come up and hoping that they're ready.
Yeah.
And honestly, I really like where this draft ranks in the Peyton era. I
Mhm.
think that it really is up there, especially because they did the offseason moves that allow you to have this easeability. You're not looking at a fan base that is necessarily put out by the choices. And that says a lot with the
Yeah.
fickleness of Broncos country. So I was really excited to see what they did there. And then ultimately, I think you can't really grade this class as you would in the last decade because of the way that
No.
they've had to go about things. And I think that really matters
Yeah.
because it's a whole lot of a different conversation if you're trying to use that first round pick on a receiver because you need to get Bo Nix weapons. This is all about projection and development. I think that's a really great place to be. So I think
Yeah.
that's why I feel so strongly about it.
Yeah. And honestly, Bri, that next pick, the Jonah Coleman pick, like I said, Sean Payton and George Payton talked about how they had two guys at the same position. Both were available on the board. One of them was Mike Washington, by all accounts. And it sounded like it was really just a coin flip, and it came down to, okay, what are some of the things that one of these guys does better than the other? How do they fit with our culture? How do they, what does our plan for them match up with how they feel, right? And from everything that I heard from Jonah Coleman's side, from those pressers, was they really like this guy. They really like him. Does he have the blazing speed and the long speed that that Mike Washington does? No, no. But he's a tough runner, and I think it was George Payton who compared compared his running style to J.K. Dobbins. And so that kind of fits, right? It kind of fits. Like, we were missing that in the latter half of the season and into the playoffs when Dobbins was out. We were missing that runner that can just go north and south and just run tough. And so they went out and they found a guy. They found a guy who's gonna take care of the ball. He's not gonna fumble a whole lot. He had 2 career fumbles. He's a guy that can be a receiver out of the backfield. And Bri, you said it, protect Bo Nix. Jonah Coleman's probably one of the best pass pro running backs in this draft class, and they snagged him at 108. I feel fantastic about that.
Motivated by it almost. You could hear it in
Yes.
his, post pick thoughts. Ultimately, this guy is going to be one of the most favorite in Broncos country for a
Big time.
multitude of reasons, which shows you that duplicatability in the running back position isn't necessarily a bad thing because when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to team fit and knowing that that's your guy, I think that's what the Broncos were doing here. And it really fits with just the way that we've seen from his pre-draft, almost predicting it to happen, manifesting it, all of those things play through. And I think that combination might actually be more exciting than we're anticipating
Yeah.
because when JK can't go, you've got Coleman in the ability to add to that red zone threat. And I think that's what's really important here is that the developmental piece, right? You've
Yeah.
got almost a duality of the where you're at in your NFL careers. And I think, there's a limited value elsewhere, but I think it was a real steal if let's say in the passing game, this role sticks. I
Mm-hmm.
am really excited about Coleman. I think everyone who is a Broncos fan is because you're emphasizing a lot of the skills that can carry over. And I think that this is the one pick where he's probably going to outplay where he was drafted. And I think that's what screams a Sean Payton pick in this round and where he was taken. So I'm excited about Jonah Coleman. I know everybody watching is too.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pulling up one of his pass pro reps here from Frankie Abbott. Thanks to him. I mean, this is great stuff that you want to see. He's meeting guys in the A gap. He is using his weight and his leverage extremely well. I think that this is a home run pick for them. I don't think you can get much better than that pick right there in that spot. The fact that they were shocked that he was sitting there, this is a tough runner. Not going to be explosive, not going to be super explosive, but one of the highest first down and touchdown rates in this class. I think we should be really happy about this. This is kind of the perfect complementary back that they've been looking for that 3-headed monster that Sean Payton likes to build, right? You need 2 guys that are going to be kind of tough bowling ball types. And Coleman is not scheme specific. If you want to run zone, he can run zone. If you want to run gap, he can run gap. You want to go outside, he can do that. You want to use him in the screen game? Sure, absolutely. I think his pass pro skills are going to come in handy with that as well. So this is just going to be a really fun add to the offense, and I think it's going to really help Bo Nix. Bri, the next pick that the Broncos made too, 3 picks later, which was the swap from the Jalen Waddle trade, Cage Casey out of Boise State, big dude, like positional versatility. I think this is great. How did you feel about this pick, and where do you see his role being with the Broncos, even as a rookie?
I was shocked only because I wasn't anticipating the Broncos to prioritize this as soon as it was. But when we start looking at the soonness being because it was their third pick of the draft, I think that's where it starts to make a lot of sense. I think offensive line coaches are really passionate about this pick with Casey because of what it brings. You already talked about versatility, but how about efficiency along the line? And I think that's where Casey really falls into it. I don't think Denver did it just to round out their draft to say, look at us picking exactly where our needs are. I think it's because he looks like a reliable blocker here. And I don't think it's necessarily a shoe in for a tackle of the future. And you already kind of talked me off of that ledge because what if there's a really good guard prospect and the ability to move over? And I think being durable, being smart and being flexible really works within not only the NFL in today's day and age, but I think in what Peyton is building for the system. You get to kind of outweigh by being useful instead of being a flashy project. And I think this one really fits in with there. I am hopeful to see where it leads in the future because Broncos made some moves in the UDFA space where it looks like they're really trying to impact the depth that they have along both lines. And I think this one speaks to that highly.
For sure. The next pick, Bri, Justin Joly, the tight end out of NC State. This was one that had a lot of Broncos country pretty excited. This is another weapon that they can use in the offense. I think that this is someone who potentially replaces Evan Ingram, whether it's this season or next season. He does a lot of he's not going to be your typical Y inline tight end. He's more of the move tight end type, big wing, tight slot type of guy. Really good blocking on those types of schemes. So like we're talking like split zone blocks, wham blocks. He is really strong and willing in that department. And I think that's perfect. That's exactly what they're looking for. Evan Ingram is not necessarily the most willing to get in there and get nasty, and that's okay. It's just not everybody's jam. But Joly has shown that he can be a good receiver downfield, one of the best contested catch guys in this class. And I think that's a big note to look for. Really good getting up the field in the seams, on wheel routes. So I think that's going to be just another weapon for Sean Payton to use. We last season, it was all about who's the Joker, who's going to be the Joker. I think that Justin Joly has the opportunity to carve out a very special role in this offense. And as Sean Payton, I mean, we've talked about this, Sean Payton wants to use more than 2 tight ends sometimes, 2, 3 tight ends. Justin Joly kind of fits in perfectly with that vision because you can use him in the run game, and that's only going to continue to expand his role. So how do you feel about it?
I think there's some room to grow, which obviously is very apparent when it comes to tight end prospects. It's going to come some maturation rate when blocking skills get challenged there. Do like the size, and I think a tight end with hands is always useful. You're not looking at day one impact necessarily, although maybe you are. You're considering this as a replacement piece. The number one, I think, proponent to it and why I would be, I guess, If you want to move off Evan Ingram, that was a very costly move for the Broncos. And then you have to look at what does it look like when efficiency comes to mind. And I
Hmm.
think Jolie is that move. I got to say, the youngest was very excited when they finally chose a tight end. He had been clamoring for it for the number one pick. Jolie wasn't on my board by means, but I think the size is really where it comes to. Yeah, that makes sense. I like that pick a lot. I am very patient with tight ends though, so
Yeah,
I'm not
have to
necessarily
be.
looking for him to be the full round of player. It's going to take a couple of years of development, and that's just part of the game. It's not like this is new. I'm not going to bring down the Broncos grade at all with that.
Yeah.
A usable tool that you have drafted. I mean that in the most complimentary way.
Yeah. I mean, he's about to be 22, still very young. Um, Brugler in his notes said that he is more Robin than Batman, um, which I kind of like that.
Why do we got to use all these comic book notations? I like it though. I think it's
He's
fair.
but he did say he is built in the mold of Jonnu Smith, and I think that's a really good, like, that's, I don't like draft comps. I don't like him at all, but I don't hate that. Like, that's a very good compliment. Jonnu Smith was one of those guys that came out and like kind of like didn't have this defined role, but then he carved it out. The more time he spent, and this was a dude who went to college at 195 pounds and beefed up over the last 3 4 years. His drops have gone down considerably. He was only at 2.5%, and now he's sitting at 6'3", 245. He's still got room to grow in his frame. I think that this is going to be a really fun pick for the Broncos. He was a guy that I kind of had my eyes on in that tight end group. There are a lot of guys that I had my eyes on in this round specifically. Raridon was already gone. Delp was already gone. Um, some of Roush was already gone. Some of these other guys were already off the board, and Jolie is just sitting there. And I think that this is going to be. They're going to try and get him integrated with the offense as soon as possible. Bri,
Yeah.
let's.
Oh, Pat, just a
Yes.
point on draft comps and player comps.
Ah, yes.
When it comes to liking some of them because they're an appropriate fit, which I actually like Johnny Smith coming in, so
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
like that it's matching up there. It's the whole adage of a thumb is a finger, but not all fingers are thumbs. So I think it's appropriate in some circumstances. I had to get that off my
I
chest
I
before we
like
moved
that
on.
one. Now I'm going to be looking at my fingers like they're thumbs. Bree, let's go through these 3 7th round picks really quick before we head out of here. Miles Scott, I think I was very intrigued. We felt like they were going to pick a DB at some point in this class. A lot of people were scared that it was going to be at 62, and as a certain player kept falling, I think we kept seeing people be like, "Oh no, are they going to do it? Are they actually going to pick?" No. They waited until the 7th round, and they got a teammate of Pat Bryant's and Alex Palczewski's, someone who walked on to Illinois as a wide receiver and made the transition to safety and ended up being a 3-year starter. And not just that, but also the green dot. So he's calling the plays out there and a team captain. This is like they this scouting department is doing their homework on not just good football players, but like good football players, good teammates, guys who are hard workers. Um, I think Miles Scott kind of fits that bill. And I see him as being the guy that will probably end up replacing PJ Locke, and just that role. Will play on special teams. He did at Illinois. A lot of punt return and punt team coverage. Um, I think that this is a guy that can carve out his role. He'll be a good teammate, kind of in that same JL Skinner type of role where just come in and do your job and be proud of it. And I kind of see that for him. The next one was Dallin Bentley, the tight end from Utah. double dipping at tight end. You said that wasn't something that you saw them doing. I felt the opposite. I felt like they needed to double dip at tight end because they just need to overhaul that room completely. Is Dallin Bentley going to be the prototype Y tight end? No, but he can do that. Showed that he can be a really good receiver. Um, one of Brugler's notes on him was probably would have had more than 25 catches if he had had an accurate quarterback. And I think that that's just hilarious. But a guy that has a lot of skills, he's got a pretty good build on him. So I'm kind of excited to see how they roll him out. Maybe, I mean, all signs are pointing to them using like just going 4 tight ends and 2 running backs and just saying, we're going to run the football. And then Bri, that last pick, Mr. Irrelevant, Red Murdoch, the linebacker from Buffalo. This was an intriguing one. I want you to tell me how you felt about this pick.
First of all, I think the most non Mr. Irrelevant, so the most relevant pick
Yeah.
name could be
Yeah.
Red Murdoch. I absolutely loved it when it came through. I was surprised that he was there, judging by the responses. I think of all of the draft Twitterers that were out there. I am excited about it because, like all three of the last names that you just listed, particularly Scott, but the idea here is they don't have to be day one impact stars
Yeah.
to have an overarching impact on this team because it'll be all culturally. I think it's going to be a lot of what they're bringing in to the identity of this team. But Red specifically, it's the easiest late round overachiever in this class to
Yeah.
believe in. And I think it's going to not be a feel good story. It'll be because he plays winning football. I'm really excited about this one. And like you said, these scouts were doing their due diligence because sometimes it's not just about football and how it shows up on film. It's about the type of individual that you're drafting. And this feels like the pick where, all right, you have back to back choices here, and you want to make sure that you get that guy in the orange and blue because of the long standing ripple effect that he'll have on your team. And I think
Yeah.
and I don't want that to overwrite his football skills. I was really excited about the pick the more that I leaned into researching and reading about him. I mean, we can talk about football all we want, but I'm really a human element type of gal, and I thought it was really exciting to see.
Yeah, this is the pick that really, like, I was like, man, if they can land this guy in the 7th round, perfect. I think he fits very well with what they're doing. Played in a 4-2-5, which for those listening, you're going to see the linebackers have a lot to do. They've got a lot to do in that scheme. And there's sometimes where, we'll see kind of 4-2-5 looks in Denver. I think that this dude is just like everybody was talking about Jacob Rodriguez. Everybody wanted Jacob Rodriguez. I think Jacob Rodriguez is a fantastic football player, knows for the football, instinctual. So is Red Murdoch. They should be in the same conversation. Over the last 2 seasons, Red Murdoch has combined for almost 300 tackles. 300 tackles, 44 more than anyone else at the FBS level. 17 forced fumbles in 34 games. I'm gonna read that back to you. 17 forced fumbles in 34 games. That's
high impact.
That's high impact. This dude has a nose for the football. He is going to be able to come in, play special teams, learn, and I think in 2-3 years he's probably going to be competing for the starting job. There is no doubt in my mind. There's another UDFA that they brought in. We'll talk about him in the next episode that I think would be a great pairing. But I mean, you talk about making an impact, especially as a 7th round pick. We think of Jonathan Cooper in that conversation, right? Like, I don't think there's ever been a 7th round pick that has had the same amount of production on the defensive side of the ball that we've seen, other than Jonathan Cooper. And I think Murdoch's got a chance to like usurp that. I think that he really could if he comes in and if he just plays his brand of football, but also learns from the guys ahead of him, learns from Coach Joseph, and these other coaches on this staff. I think that he has the greatest opportunity to be a starter within 2 seasons. I really do. I think he's that type of football player. Bri, we asked the listeners, we asked the fans what grade they would give the Broncos for their draft. And believe it or not, it is a tie. Half the people said they would give it an A. Half the people said they would give it a B. So I'm going to ask you, and draft grades are always ambiguous. It's very easy to say, oh, yeah, they got an A, and then those guys don't end up panning out and, all that. But based on, our conversations here right now, our conversations throughout the draft, the trade of Jalen Waddle, what would you give the Broncos for this draft class? Just instant reaction, knowing that these guys are probably not going to be starting right away, but more impact guys. What would you give? What grade would you give this class?
Well, I think it's easy for me to give them an A, and I'm trending more towards the minus side. And I think I'm comfortable going that high because you can't grade it like you would normally. You already ran through the reasons why it's not immediately helping the offensive or defensive side of the ball. This is all about development, rookie learning curves. You get to have kind of the grace that's associated with that, which I hope everyone does have, because I love the hindsight when individuals try to talk about the past draft after a player has no longer worked out for a multitude of different reasons. But I think once you take Waddle out of the formula, I think the rest of the draft, it wasn't, and I've noted it a couple of times, it wasn't just about finding star impact. It really was about the answers that you needed. You had JFM departing, so Onyedim was the right pick there. Coleman answers what happens if J.K. Dobbins gets hurt. And Cage Casey is really that depth and future rotation that you have along the offensive line. And then if you just go down the list, as we've done here, you get special teams depth, you have safety depth, you have linebacker depth, and you have a lot of physicality. And I think that's what really adds here. Was it the big splash moves? No, but it was mature. And I think where you're looking for your team to be at this phase, especially as they just came off the run that they did with one game outside of the Super Bowl, you're collecting talent. And I think this team is, has the ability now to draft for roles and insurance and testing those straight stress points that they've been kind of really hammered with when it comes to if you lose a guy on injury. And now you have those answers within your reach. It's going to make it even harder to go from 90 to 53 as that time comes around. And that's where I'm looking towards right now. It's now, how do you choose against all of these individuals that you picked up in the draft and through the UDFA process?
Yeah. I don't like giving out A's for draft classes. I just don't. But man, I would be remiss if I didn't give our Broncos an A because I'm just such a homer. No, I think you have to take the Waddle trade into account. You got a home run hitter on offense with your first round pick, essentially, and you still you essentially just traded a first and a third for Jalen Waddle. I'll take that. Yep, I'll take that all day, every day. And you still ended up, you traded down, you got more picks. They were working the board fantastically. You filled pretty much every single one of your needs with your draft class. How can I come away not saying, yeah, this is an A minus for me? This is an A minus for me. I think you did a great job filling these holes. Yeah, like, are there guys that you probably could have gotten that maybe could be more impact? Sure. But you could say that about any class, right? You could say that about anybody. Look at what San Francisco did. There were probably some other pieces that they probably could have taken. Look at what some of these other teams did.
What you can match up against big consensus boards?
Oh yeah. Well, like I don't think that this combo, George Paton and Sean Payton, have given us any reason not to trust their scouting process. Them combined, my goodness, what a brain. What a brain that is. I'd love to just be a fly on the wall when they're looking at these prospects and see what they're seeing. Because, I mean, a lot of people, and the consensus, it's funny, the consensus has been so negative about the Broncos draft class this season, but much of the same as it was last season and the year before that. Um, they keep just showing you, yeah, we know what we're doing. Remember when everybody was freaking out about Pat Bryant being selected? Who is this guy? Oh, he's number 156 on my board for wide receivers. This guy's a UDFA. Well, and then they just turned him into one of the better rookie wide receivers in the NFL. I'm going to trust him. I'm going to trust what they're doing. I'm going to trust the vision. I think this is an A-. You got a lot of guys that are going to help out on special teams right away. You got some guys that are going to help the offense in small ways right away. I think that this is a really great class. That is going to do it for us in this episode. In the next episode, we're going to cover these UDFAs. We couldn't do it all in one episode. We're going to give these UDFAs some respect, okay? Because one of these guys is making the roster. History shows one of these guys is making the roster. We got to find out who it is. I think we might have the inside track on who it's going to be, but we will talk about that in the next episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure that you follow Bri and I on social media at BriMasis303, at Patrick Coyote, and follow at Believe Network as well. And make sure you head over to FanDuel Sportsbook before the NBA playoffs really come to a wrap. Throw some money on your Nuggets. Maybe you'll put enough money into the pot that it'll invigorate them to victory. All right. Tune in next time. We love you. Go Broncos.
Go Broncos.